Good morning and welcome to episode 109 of the Jaguars On SI podcast. My name's Gus Logue, joined as always by my co-host John Shipley. John, speaking of two, I got two questions for you. An easy first one and then a more difficult follow-up.
I am not a crook. That's my
Have
answer.
you watched Giants offseason Hard Knocks?
I've just seen the clips so far. The clips have been pretty interesting.
Yeah, the clips have been interesting.
I've came away deeply unencouraged by the general manager, but and also one aspect. Do you think so? You know how like they tweeted out his like phone call with Saquon to tell him he was going to be a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Saquon had any idea that was being filmed and recorded for TV?
Oh, probably not. Like, they probably recorded the phone call, and then like if Saquon like said something that like wasn't great for cameras, then maybe they would have just scratched it. But yeah, no, I don't think they gave him the heads up.
That's pretty awkward, right? Like I would just straight up not take phone calls. Like I'd move like Tony Soprano. Like, you talk to me in person. We're not.
Yeah,
you talk to him in person. He's going to talk to me. We're not going to talk on the phone. I'm definitely not going to talk to you.
Right. It's not the kind of thing you're going to do over text or email. So you got to hear the person's voice. And so I like your strategy of just turning off the cell phone. Come find me. But one of the clips, I haven't watched it either. Like the clips have been good, so I think I'm going to sit down to. But one of the clips that I thought was cool was Malik Neighbors doing his interview at the NFL Combine with the Giants, and he was saying that he hates losing more than he loves winning, which I can definitely relate. But so do you relate? I guess is my first question.
You relate to that?
Yeah.
What do you hate losing in pickleball? Like,
yeah, I mean just anything.
Oh, do I relate to that? Okay, I see what you're saying now. Do I relate to that? Go on.
Okay.
Come out with it.
I can be a competitor even if I'm not a professional athlete. Yeah, I played pickleball yesterday, and I happened to win a tournament. And then when I was driving home, I just felt like content and like, okay, like that was fun. But then if I drive home after losing, then like I'm irate the whole drive home, and I have to like calm myself down a little bit. Anyway,
I like that. Pickleball's fun. I'll be honest. I didn't know you played pickleball. I was just doing a stereotype, but pickleball's fun.
That's fair. Well, I played a lot of tennis and ping pong in high school, and so now with this pickleball wave, I'm kind of well equipped for it. So
you didn't need to tell me. You didn't need to tell me you played a lot of ping pong in your life.
Our
first meeting, I got that.
If there's a ping pong table back in the Jag Stadium, then I'm challenging you, and you'll see. Anyway, there's been two kind of developments with the pod. I don't know if developments is the right word. News with the pod in the past week. One is that Greg Rosenthal gave us and you a shout out on Mean Times podcast, which is maybe the coolest thing ever because
it was like the daily NFL pod. I apologize to Greg. It was what the Around the NFL podcast now is. NFL Daily.
Right.
That's what it's called.
So and it was with Mina, but it's a big deal because they're both of them, but especially Greg is like just a pillar of NFL podcasting and a legend in the industry. And so for him to recognize you in the pod was pretty fantastic. But then on the flip side, you kind of got crushed a little bit in our draft that we did with Goodall last week. I mean, I think I should have pulled up the final tallies, but I think I got like 60, 70% of votes. Zach got 20 or 30, and you got like 10% or something like that.
Can I be honest?
Yeah.
I'm skeptical about the results.
Oh, okay. We agreed. I bet on myself. I was like, no, the votes are going to count this time. And you see why I called a popularity contest. You literally got a shout out from Greg Rosenthal. Like, come on now.
Were you buying votes?
No.
Were you going to cemeteries and looking up dead names and putting those down as Twitter accounts?
That's messed up, John. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't mess up the integrity of the game.
That's how the mob got Kennedy voted in, according to the Irishman. I watched that a few days ago, so that made me think that you did that.
Yeah. All right. So my question to you is: did it feel worse losing by so much in the team AFC draft that we did last week on the pod, or did it feel better getting that cool shout out from Greg?
I don't really think I lost. I think people were just wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. They didn't vote with their brains. They didn't vote with their brains or vote with their hearts. So
I was
okay.
telling you, man, like the fact that you didn't get CJ Stroud or Trevor Lawrence, like really set you back. And the funny thing is that we gave Zach the first pick, and you were like, "Gus, you know what? I feel good about this. You can take Trevor Lawrence with the second pick." And so like you did it to yourself, man.
I thought people would realize I built the 85 Bears on defense, and the offense is more than good. Somebody was like, "That offensive line is going to get you killed." It's the best one of the three. And
I don't think it was the best one of the three, but it was still a fine line. And you had Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, so that's a cool run game.
You know what killed me?
What killed you?
I think the only Jaguar starter I had on offense was Mitch Morse. Like Goodall took 8 of them, so roughly. So
Yeah,
wasn't exactly my fault. So I'm like, what do y'all want me to do? Pick Luke Farrell?
yeah.
Somebody replied, and they were like, the GM at Team C really hates the Jags offense. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Watch how the draft plays out. Watch the episodes.
Like we still got the Texans offense to worry about.
Also, my second point, I feel like if they watched the episode instead of just voting,
I was about to say
and saw my process, maybe I would have gotten 12% of the votes. But I concede. You destroyed me, Gus. You wrecked me, and you proved that maybe these polls are biased by putting my propaganda machine behind them. So I'm excited to put our names on the next one.
It's been a lot of load balls, I feel like, this offseason. I haven't been balky ball personally, maybe once or twice. I got balky ball last week, but yeah, it's been a good offseason for me. But it's been a nice and slow offseason in general, and so slow enough that you've been putting out a top 25 list of the best Jaguars, just most talented Jaguars on the current roster. So as you explained it to me, it would be like who would have the highest Madden rating almost.
Yeah.
So not necessarily most important or most valuable, just the best players. And so you currently have players 25 through 18 out right now in separate articles, right?
Yeah, I do. I have 25 through 18, 17 through 1 are going to come. I am doing a most important list, which is like slightly different. Like you'll have players who are like in the 20s, like in the top 10 on there. Like just because maybe a player isn't one of the best players on the team, he's still relatively, important, etc. Like Mitch Morse will be on the top 10 list in some form or fashion, and nobody thinks he's one of the 10 best players on the team, no matter what an upgrade he is. But yeah, no, it's my first year doing the series. I've enjoyed doing it so far. I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what people think about how my top 5 checks out.
I'm excited too. I'm excited for the whole rest of the top 17 to come out because it's been interesting because you start off the list with Logan Cook at 25, and then there's a decent amount of newcomers. But should we just go?
Yeah, let's just get there. So Logan Cook, the only player on the list whose positional value is going to be factored in for. Otherwise, it's not factored in at all. But I don't know. I feel like you selfishly have to do it with the punter a little bit.
Oh, for sure. He deserves a spot on the list.
The entire article is saying how he's one of the best punters in the AFC, but I don't know. I feel like the 20s is where punters like if you're the 2013 Jaguars, Logan Cook's probably top 12. But if you're a relatively adult, semi-normal team, I feel like that's a 20s is a good range for a good punter, and Logan Cook's a good punter, man.
Oh, absolutely. Objectively, and he has been for a long time. There's definitely not as much volatility with punting as there is with kicking, but it's still been good to see that Logan Cook has been consistently good throughout his career.
Oh, for sure. So last year he ranked 21st in total punts, but he ranked 11th in punts down inside the 20-yard line. So almost half his punts were being down inside the 20. His 47.5% rate of punts inside the 20 was third in the NFL, and he was only 19% in touchback rate. He had 4 touchbacks all year. So he's gotten really good at not booming the ball, through the end zone and stuff, and actually set. I thought he was a big reason the defense was having some success in that first half of the season. He was setting them up in some great field position, and that Saints game especially.
I feel like we've talked about that a little bit of how special teams will set up a certain side of the ball, and we mostly talked about it, I feel like, with Jamal Agnew being able to kind of bring some juice to the offense by just having a big return, even if it's not a touchdown, just getting across midfield or even across a 30 or 40 is a big deal. And so, as you're saying, on the flip side too, Logan Cook can definitely do good things for the defense. And yeah, he's gotten so good at just pinning teams within the 20. I feel like we've been like fans of like gunners on the team for a few years now, jokingly, like Daniel Thomas we talked about for a while. Chris Claybrooks we were big fans of before he left the team, but
big fans of his gunning ability.
Exactly. But yeah, like they're part of the reason we're able to shout out the gunners is because Logan Cook has been so good for so long. And so
sure.
I definitely think he deserves to be on the top 25. And so I think number 25 is fine. But my only question is Ross Matisic a top 17 player, or is that just like your special teams player for the list? Because Matisic did make a Pro Bowl last year.
That is the special teams player for the list.
Okay, that's fair.
Matisic was not a flop.
Was he under consideration? Was he an honorable mention just off the list, or?
I have not thought about him as a player since the season ended until the second. So no.
All right, that's fair.
The long snapper bias. Long snappers are used to it. He's a really good long snapper, but yeah, there's a long snapper bias. I barely think the people who kick the balls count as players. No, he's all right. He's a really good player, but no, Logan Cook will be the only specialist on there.
Okay, I think both of those are fair.
So too high, too low, or is the soup just right?
I think just right, because I think just Logan Cook should have been on the list. And as you were saying earlier, like I think the 20s is fair. Even if he was like the greatest punter of all time, which I don't know if anyone even owns that title, I feel like he would be like only like a top 15 player rather than a top 5 player. So yeah, the 20s.
Probably Ray Guy.
Fair. Ray Guy.
Yeah. Is that a new name for you?
I feel like it rings a bell, but I like couldn't tell you anything about him. Did he play for the Raiders?
I think so, but I don't know. They named the punting award after him, and I know he was supposed to be a renowned punter.
Well, he did play for the Raiders.
Sure he's in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he's in the Hall of Fame. So, all right, move on to number 24. Number 24 was left guard Ezra Cleveland. Gus, let me know that one. Is that too high, too low, or just right? The reason I had him there is, obviously last year he dealt with some injuries. He moved around a little bit, but ultimately his 2023 numbers aren't awful. He was 19th out of 50 eligible guards in terms great. So he was like a top 20 left guard basically last year. So I feel like he's at least deserving to be, on the list. I'm not sure if the ceiling is that much higher than like top 20, top 15 left guard, but I feel like he's at least deserving to be around this range.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit too low, honestly. I'm buying Ezra Cleveland stock this offseason because when he came over from Minnesota, like when the news first broke, I thought, okay, like he's probably mid at best, but more so just like a solid body to have for depth. But then I watched the Vikings film and I thought, wow, he's actually not a game changer, but arguably a plus starter. And I thought definitely just a viable starter in Minnesota. And then he wasn't quite that in Jacksonville, but I think a lot of that has to do with an injury that he had last year, as well as just having to get acclimated to a new team and a new offensive line and new teammates in the middle of the offseason or in the middle of the season, especially when there was like struggles at center to the right of him and then kind of a lot of moving pieces at left tackle to the left of him. And so I think that there's a real shot that with like a full offseason with the team, with some time to gel with Mitch Morse and whoever's going to start at left tackle, and then just time to recover from his injury as well. Like I think he could end up being a little bit of a steal from that trade, and people will look back on that trade with a little bit more positivity or whatever. And so I think if I were making a top 10 or whatever list of most important Jaguars, he might be on it for me, because I think for pretty much everyone else, offensive line, like if they stay healthy, you don't really have any question marks about them, or at least any strong, any questions about them really. But for Cleveland, I feel like he's like the one potential weak link on the offensive line, and the O-line is kind of like the defense as a whole, where it's more about not having a weak link than it is having like one or two superstars. And so as long as Cleveland isn't able to be that weak link and is able to kind of like take that next step this season, like I expect him to, then I think he could be a lot higher on the list at this time next year. So with that said, like I do think the range that he's in right here is pretty fair. Like I would have just made him like maybe the 21st or 22nd player rather than 24th.
That's fair. No, that's probably fair. I mean, I will say, like, I agree with you, like, in terms of importance, the offensive line staying together. But I see that as more of like a unit thing than maybe like maybe the one guy I think they can't afford to get hurt. Like, if you had to pick one, is maybe more. So you can afford Cameron Anton because you have Walker Little. Maybe you can't afford Walker Little because then if somebody else gets hurt, you're screwed. So maybe Walker Little is actually the hipster answer. We're talking about Ezra Cleveland. Phil Rauscher at the media roundtable last month said, I mean, for Ezra to Cleveland to come in, we traded for him as a guard. And then on a Wednesday, us go, hey, you're going to play left tackle against Myles Garrett. And he was like, okay. And then Blake Hance, you're going to go in there as soon as he gets hurt and go play. And, like, that's hard. Now, do we need to get better? You damn right we do. You know what I mean? That's the profession we've chosen. We got to play the best football we can and try to win the championship. But at the end of the day, we just got to keep on rolling. So, yeah. Well, that's like saying, like, you know, not Hance, Jesus. Cleveland came in already injured and then was put into a pretty, you know, overall crappy situation. Rauscher also, I didn't include it in that story, but had a great quote about how he was like his first 2 years in Jacksonville, basically the left guard was like the what the hell are we going to do position. And he feels more secure going into a season with Ezra at left guard than he's probably felt the last 2 seasons. Like one going in with Ben Barch in 2022 and then last year. Not really knowing who the left guard is going to be because Ben Barch has come back from injury. Tyler Shatley obviously had his scary AFib situation. So definitely a different feeling around the left guard position right now, I think. So maybe that's a bit of a testament to him. All right. Next name, number 23. Tell me, too high, too low, just right. I had Roy Robertson Harris. And I could see this being like a little too low. Like he's had some like legit flashes. Like he had an all-time performance in 2022 against the Chargers. He had, I think, 4 tackles for loss that game. And in the final 5 games that year, he had 3 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, and 8 quarterback hits. And he's like one of like a handful of interior defensive linemen who have put together like that kind of stretch. Now, that's obviously been like the ceiling, the absolute flash. You haven't seen that, I think, week in and week out. But he was still like, for an interior defensive line group that struggled to get after the quarterback, he was still far and away the best pass rusher. Like just looking at the numbers on the film, he can make some impact plays in the backfield. I feel like this is a decent range for him.
Yeah, I think this is just right. Like as you were saying, the consistency is kind of the thing with him where he really turned it up at the end of the 2022 or 23 season. But then in the run game, especially, like sometimes he can kind of be put on skates and is less reliable there. But I feel like the best interior pass rusher is more of an indictment on the team than anything else. But like he's certainly shown flashes, and so I wonder if we've talked so much about how Eric Armstead's presence is going to help out Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker this offseason. And so I wonder how much it's going to be able to help out Roy Robertson Harris and like Mason Smith and kind of the backup types as well, with like not just so much attention being set on Armstead and Walker and Hines-Allen, but just like the fact that they're probably going to kill this offseason, if assuming that they all stay healthy. Like I think that like seeing those guys produce and play well is going to be motivating for Roy Robertson Harris and like the rest of the D line and the rest of the defense, really. But it wouldn't shock me if he's another guy that like might be a few points up higher on this list this time next year. But for now, I do think it's like a fair ranking.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. And hey, kudos to you on the smoothness of the Hines-Allen.
Yeah, you like that? That was the first time. I definitely thought I was going to butcher it.
I've had to catch myself a few times. Happy for him. That's obviously a really cool thing. All right, player number 22. I'll say I think this is the most controversial one so far. I got a couple of different replies to it. Number 22 is Walker Little. Huh? Too high?
I think he's too low, man. Too low.
Yeah.
Are other people saying he's too high?
Yeah. I had people like saying like, why is a backup on there? Which
the Jags keep 3 starting caliber tackles on their team. That's why. So
I do think I probably factored
yeah.
in his role a little bit. That's why he's at not higher. But talent wise, I think he's got to be up there. That first month of the season, granted, it's only a 4-game stretch, but he obviously played well in 2022. In the first 4 games last year, he was tied for 6th among 49 tackles with at least 100 snaps and pressures allowed. He only had 5 pressures allowed in the first 4 games last year. The only tackles to allow fewer pressures in that span were Trent Brown, Trent Williams, Mahard Ryman, Tristan Wirfs, and Penei Sewell. So pretty good company to be in. Obviously his season kind of went downhill once he got moved to guard and then got hurt. His season kind of went downhill. It was kind of obvious he wasn't 100% the rest of the year, and then it also became kind of obvious that he's not really a guard either. So he kind of had a lost season after he got taken out of the lineup. But I think the numbers just show, like throughout his career, when he plays, I mean, he's a good player. So Rauscher, again, at the roundtable had some really good quotes. There's a couple here, so I'm going to just read them all off. Said, Walker's played well, and Walker's a damn good football player. And, you sit there and you're in my seat and you say, well, I got 3 really good tackles. You know what I mean? And you sit there and you're in Walker's seat or Cam's seat or Anton's seat and you're like, shit, really good tackles here. One of us isn't going to be able to play. But the reality is they're all going to play at some point, somehow, some way. That is the reality of what the NFL is, and we're lucky for that. He then went on to say, Walker's got good tape, but at the end of the day, I'm sure he'll be rewarded for what he's put on tape. It's not hard to coach Walker. Walker does exactly what you ask him to do, and he does it really, really well. And I think Walker understands the importance of this season to his personal life in terms of like where the contract and different things go. And then, he was kind of asked about, well, isn't Walker basically a backup? And he said, sorry, my computer's being weird. All right. He said, and coaches said this, and, perception is like, the tackle positions are locked up, but like we're in a spot where the depth chart is open and, we got to play the best 5, however that plays out. Walker's played a lot of positions for us since he's been here, and that maybe hasn't been fair to him. You know what I mean? Like he's been the guard, he's been there, he's been here, and it's been like, hey, do this, do that. And he's, every time he said okay, and he goes out and he does it the best that he can. So now that he can kind of put himself on one spot and let's go compete. Let's go see where we're at and see how that plays out. So obviously a lot to digest there, but to me, it's him saying like, I think Walker and the team both know this is a big year for him to potentially get a bag, wherever that may be. He's openly admitting that Walker's basically been screwed over like in the first 3 years of his career, like not being settled into one spot. And does it seem like he's kind of opening a door to maybe there's a little like, maybe it's not 100% sure thing Cam Robinson starts at left tackle?
That's what it sounded like to me. I feel like I've like heard whispers of that, but then to hear like Rauscher say it publicly, just like to not obviously they said like there's going to be a competition, but he didn't not say that there's going to be a competition. And I feel like that's where you can like kind of pick up a lot of things from coach speak. And so I think you're right. I think he opened the door, especially like talking about the most eye-opening quote from like any of these articles that I saw was like just how Rauscher was saying that Little knew how important this season is for him because like I think if you do this list next year and Walker's on the team, he'll definitely be higher ranked, but he might not be on the team to be higher ranked. And so it'll be like that's definitely, even though I think Ezra is potentially like the X factor of the line, just because everyone else should be solid, assuming good health. Then like the situation of left tackle with both tackles being like not necessarily one is way better than the other, and then both tackles being on the final year of their contracts is definitely going to be an interesting storyline to follow through the whole season.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I love the Ezra Cleveland as the X Factor take. You've gotten much better at the ratchetings up because that one that blows my hair back. I love
you like
I
that
love
one.
It. I'm proud of you. Now,
I feel like I still think that Walker is still too low, and I think that just recency bias has a lot to do with it because last year he tried to make the position change, and then he was in there for all of 6 snaps before he got injured. And then I don't think we saw him again after the injury. But then compare that to 2 off seasons ago when he put together a great performance against the likes of Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack in the playoff game against the Chargers. And like at that point, it was like Walker Little was clearly good, and like he could hypothetically be around for the next decade plus with our quarterback one. So it's interesting now, and I feel like the like lack of physicality by not just the offensive line but the offense in general last year, like people are kind of clamoring for Cam Robinson to start 17 games again because he definitely has like that mean streak and that competitiveness to him. But I think Walker is probably it's tough because experience definitely matters a lot in the league, especially at left tackle. So I don't I'll stop at comparing him to Cam Robinson, but I think Walker is like a top 20 player on the team.
Give me a number. How many games Walker starts at left tackle and how many Cam starts at left tackle this year? Because I agree with Rauscher. I think at some point Walker's going to play. Like it's the NFL. Like very rarely do you see both offensive tackles play like 100% of the snaps. Like at some point Walker's going to play.
I'll say Cam Robinson plays 10 games or starts 10 games, and then that leaves Walker Little with 7 starts.
It was interesting how Rauscher mentioned Anton being like, oh, wow, there's 2 tackles here. Like, no, Anton doesn't got shit to worry about. It's very clear that Walker is a left tackle, right?
Yeah, so that'll be interesting too, is that like there's also been whispers that like Anton could move back to his college position at left tackle, and then the Jags would like, because I think there's like one scenario is that the Jags keep they re-sign either Cam Robinson or Walker Little after this offseason, and then one of those two is like the long-term left tackle. Anton stays as a long-term right tackle. But then I think there's also a scenario where if the team doesn't get as good tackle play as they want out of Walker Little and Cam Robinson, or maybe they don't get as good tackle play out of Cam Robinson as they want, and then Walker Little, maybe they just get priced out of in free agency, then I think that if both of those guys leave, I wouldn't be surprised if Jacksonville's plan is to move Anton to left tackle and then maybe draft a tackle or a right tackle in the first round. Like we've said how like Tyson is still unsigned, and so like as of now the expectation is cornerback round 1, but you get a lot of
it'd be such a good bit, dude.
Yeah, like keep pigeonholing themselves into this like first round obvious need every single offseason. And so yeah, that's the
I mean, Trent Baalke said it after the season ended in his end of season press conference that he absolutely believes Anton could play left tackle, and Baalke, the only person that's a bigger Anton fan than you and I are probably, it's probably Trent. So I 100% believe that they'd be comfortable with him playing left tackle one day. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. All right, let's move to number 21, Gus, the only rookie on the list at all. Brian Thomas Jr. It felt weird ranking him because he hasn't played a game yet. So right. I'm mostly going off traits and like his last year of tape from LSU. But I don't know, man. The size, the speed, the explosiveness, the smoothness, the ability to generate big plays. I feel like 21 is a reasonable place for like the number 23 pick. Like you expect the first round pick to be one of those like top 20-ish players, even as a rookie, right?
Yeah, I think this is a fair spot of like almost similar to Logan Cook, where like you got to make sure he's on the list, but I don't think he necessarily has to be too high. And I feel like this is also fair because I feel like he would have put him around 21 or at 21 after the draft, and then like probably would have just stayed the same through the offseason, right? Based on like what we've seen with padless practices. And so I think it's a fair ranking. Not to be a broken record, but obviously he could jump up in the rankings this time next year. But I feel like he's also a player that could like, I mean, knock on wood, but like just not be on the rankings at all. And so he's definitely volatile in that regard, and that like who knows like what his rookie season will be, especially because like I wouldn't be surprised if he was immediately the most talented receiver on the Jags roster.
Physically, yeah.
Christian Kirk is pretty underrated. But at the same time, like he's only going to be number 3 or 4 in the pecking order from day one. And so like it's going to be easier said than done to like really climb the depth chart and like truly make a name for himself as a rookie.
The best for Brian Thomas isn't going to be in 2024. I think that's fair to say, right? Like even like in like the best case scenario, like he's going to get better, one, as he gets more experience and grows, and then two, his role's going to expand in the future compared to what it is this year. And in my opinion, they're going down the right path. Like, you know, like having your rookie receiver being like a number 3 or number 4 option as opposed to putting the entire passing game on him, especially for his like profile as a receiver. I think that's probably, you know, the right thing for him, because you can still make his touches and targets super valuable based on how you deploy him. But now I said in the article, like he's somebody who could easily leap like 10 spots next year. If he's not on the top 25 at all next year, that'd be cause for concern. I think that'd be cause for. You could see a scenario where that happens.
I'm only saying that because it's a rookie who we've never seen play a regular season game. It doesn't have anything to do with Brian Thomas. It's just that
that's fair.
Yeah, it's someone that hasn't played. But yeah. Number 20.
Moving on, number 20. Yes, sir. Ronald Darby. He was a weird one to place because he's still playing really well, but obviously this is projecting for 2024 and he's older. But among 61 cornerbacks last year with at least 30 targets in coverage, he ranked number 11th in passer rating against, number 2 in yards per attempt allowed, number 9 in completion rate against, and tied for number 4 in yards allowed per coverage snap. He was pretty freaking good for Baltimore last year. And I think, at least from seeing him physically, he can still run. So I think he probably has another season at least until, you know, maybe his body, his speed starts to lose a little bit. I reasonably could have maybe put him a few spots lower, but I feel like with this specific team structure, I feel like this is a decent spot for him.
Yeah, I might have put him a few spots higher out of bias. I feel like I'm saying everyone would be higher though, and so maybe I'd like
make your own list, pal.
Like the full list was available, and I'd be like, oh, well, I'd have to move that person down. But yeah, just bias because like I think Ronald Darby was really good last year, and like people, the football nerds will say that there's a really steep drop off for cornerbacks after they turn 30, and like. Yeah, that's true in most cases, but like you have to look at each case specifically. And in this case, Ronald Darby was playing like a top 15 or 20 cornerback in the league, let alone player on his own team last season. And so I think like he's one that because of his age, I guess, and because like he's clearly more of a short-term fixture than anything, then like I guess I could see him dropping more than I could see him rising on next year's list. But for this year's list, I think he's still got it. I think he's a really good player. I would have put him like 2 spots higher, but that's just kind of fair. So I think this is a good range.
That's fair. It did become a great. Jesus Christ!
It's early, John. It's a morning.
Yeah, no, I struggle with pronouncing my R's at any time of the day, my friend. It's a constant battle I deal with every day. Like whenever Sarah catches me saying something stupid, she like repeats it to me. She's like, "You said what?"
Just let it go, Sarah.
Yeah. Well, with that said, like it's been a great bit. The fact that one of the big reasons I thought it made sense for the Jaguars to release Darius Williams was because he was hitting that drop-off stage, and now I'm relatively caping for a dude who's either the same age or older. So they went ahead and blew that theory out of the water. I've still seen people say like call Darius Williams like a cap casualty. Did it not have like $30 million in cap right now? Like they easily could have kept him, correct?
Yeah, it's just because they see that the Jags saved $11.5 million against the cap by releasing him, but like it's definitely more so just a scheme difference because people will say like, oh, cap casualty, and then like they signed or just the $11.5 million in savings, and then Ronald Darby was brought in for a lower cost, so they were like, I think a lot of people just make the assumption that it was a money-based move, but it was definitely a scheme-based move where Darius Williams is like had an even better season than Ronald Darby last year, honestly. But Darius was also like one of the 5 best zone corners in the league, and he really thrives in off coverage where he can kind of see plays coming to him and like really utilize his route recognition skills and just his play recognition skills and make jumps on the ball. But then Darby is someone that Ryan Nielsen has obviously coveted because of his ability to play press coverage, whether it's man or zone, but just to really be able to live at the line of scrimmage and play physically. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. All right, number 19, Antonio Johnson. Is it maybe a little bit of a projection, but I think when the season ends, he'll be higher than this. I think he's going to have a starting role. I think he's going to start at safety, and Savage starts at nickel. Jarian Jones will get on the field some way, somehow, but I think that's their starting defensive back room. And I think Antonio Johnson, we've talked a lot about how Nielsen's scheme could be good for Trayvon Walker and Devin Lloyd. I think Antonio Johnson could be the one that's the best for, because Nielsen loves blitzing defensive backs off the edge, safeties, nickels, and Antonio Johnson's fantastic at that. I mean, look at his strip sack against the Browns last year and some of the stuff he did at A&M in college. So I think Antonio Johnson's in a really good spot in the scheme, and he's going to be given the chance this year to play more defensive snaps. So I got him at 19.
Yeah, you sold me. I thought this was the one player that I thought was definitely ranked a little bit too high, and I would have dropped him a little bit. But I respect you kind of making it a projection and just kind of you're kind of betting on the player that he was going to be ranked higher next year, especially with, I mean, it's a good point about Nielsen and his blitzes. And I feel like he made Richie Grant look pretty fantastic off the edge last year.
UCF, baby.
What the?
You want me to do the sword? No?
Oh, okay. The sword is good. I like the sword.
Yeah. What is it? What do we have? Actually, we have this.
I don't know. This seems familiar. I don't know what it is. Maybe just another sword thing. Okay.
This is gonna be something else. I'm gonna get canceled for it. It's gonna be.
Yeah, I know. I was like, you're about to do something. You're getting a little bit too close to it.
Yeah, Chris flew too close to this song.
Yeah. And so I think you have a good take and you sold me on it, but I feel like we haven't seen a lot of Antonio Johnson, and the few flashes that we've seen have certainly been promising, but I've been a lot more interested in the flashes that Walker Little has shown over the course of 3 seasons. And so I would have personally ranked Walker over Antonio Johnson, even if Antonio Johnson will probably get more playing time and end up being higher ranked next year. But yeah, I see the vision.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I had no retort for that. He reasonably could have been behind Ronald Darby too, but like I said, I'm maybe projecting a little bit, selling high on some of the flashes from last year. All right, number 18, last one we're going to go through before we cut to a break. Mitch Morse. I think he's still you look at the blown block rate stuff. He's top. I want to say he's number 13 last year, so he's probably a top 15 center. He's obviously on the lower end of that, I think, but he's so much better in the running game than Luke Fortner that it obviously serves as a giant upgrade. I feel like this is a good spot for him. I don't think he's not the perennial Pro Bowl caliber center that he was in Kansas City or his first year or two in Buffalo, but he's still obviously a good player.
Right. Yeah, I think this is a fair spot for him, the high teens. It's a little bit tough. You do have a lot of newcomers in this range, but it's the right range to include them. And so, I mean, I guess Eric Armstead is going to be higher. I probably would have I assume you have Gabe Davis somewhere on the list. So I probably would have put Mitch Morse ranked higher than Gabe Davis. But I guess the age factor is definitely fair, where Morse is kind of at the end of his prime and Gabe Davis is arguably just entering his prime. And so that one could backfire on me. But yeah, I think, again, the biggest question mark for Morse is health, not because of any previous injuries, but simply because of his age and how long he's been in the league. And so I think as long as he's able to start 16, 17 games, then I expect this ranking to be fair by the end of the season too.
I also gave him a boost because he prevented people from mocking JPJ to the Jaguars any longer.
That's fair. One thing I'm interested in seeing from Morse is how often he pulls this offseason, because the Jags have used Sheriff a ton as their lead guy on pulling power runs and stuff like that. But now, I saw Cleveland do it honestly a lot in Minnesota. And then he did a little bit less in Jacksonville, which I don't know if it was just because he was getting acclimated or because of the injury or what. But now between Sheriff and Cleveland and Mitch Morse, who was pulling a ton for Buffalo last year and just in previous years in general, they've got three guys who can like go out in space, 4 guys if you include Cam Robinson, who's great at like pulling out for screens or just at whatever. And so to have 4 of your 5 guys, and like not even that Anton is bad at it, but just we haven't really seen it from him. But he's certainly a great athlete, and so it's definitely a very athletic offensive line with a lot of guys that can like go out and do different assignments in various gaps and kind of like move bodies around. And so I'm interested to see like if a healthy season from Cleveland and then like the addition of Morse, like whether that kind of like unlocks their scheme in terms of the running game and just like protections and different things that they're able to do.
I think Brandon Thorne, like the offensive line guru guy, I think he like did like superlatives. It was like lightest, heaviest offensive lines, etc. And I think the Jaguars are like top 5 in terms of like games played. Like they're like starting 5. So they definitely got a lot of experience, which makes sense. I mean, Cam Robinson's played a ton of games, Mitch Morse played a ton of games, Brandon Scherer's played a ton of games, Ezra Cleveland's played a couple seasons, and then obviously Anton had his rookie season. So all right,
he's the least experienced, but he's also probably the best lineman. So they're kind of in a good spot in that regard.
100%. All right, guys, we're going to cut for a quick break, and we'll be right back to go over our next segment.
Welcome back to the Jaguars on SI podcast. For our second and final segment, we are just going to go over some players who are recently ranked by ESPN and CBS Sports in their just 2024 positional player rankings. And so we've got Travis Etienne, Evan Engram, Josh Hines-Allen, and Andre Sisco that are ranked by those 2 media affiliates. And so we're just going to go over where they're ranked and whether we agree or disagree.
I got hyped whenever you say Jaguars on SI podcast. It sounds so much better. And now that's naturally, I just let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I thought they both were, though. I'm glad it makes you happy. So Travis Etienne was ranked 10th by ESPN, and ESPN they did Jeremy Fowler would poll or survey a bunch of anonymous league executives, and so ESPN is kind of like the list, and then CBS Sports was, I don't know if the same guy did all the lists or if they broke it up among the staff, but it's basically just by a CBS Sports staff writer.
That's your guy, Cody Benjamin. 10-10's guy. He's 10-10's guy.
Is he? He could be 10-10's guy. I'm not the company 1010XL 92 FM radio.
Wow, you're a company man.
All right. Well, Travis Etienne was ranked 10th by ESPN and 11th by CBS. And so, what say you, John? Too high, too low, just right?
No, I think 10th is fair. Maybe like bump him up, maybe a spot or 2. Like his yards per attempt definitely obviously took a nosedive last year. I think that had more to do with what was going on in front of him as opposed to things that he was doing. But I think he's gotten better as a receiver. I think he's like, he ranked among the best in the entire league at missed tackles forced, yards after contact, those kind of things. He's gotten, I think, a little bit better as a pass blocker. Again, that showed more as a receiver. That touchdown against the Steelers, he wasn't doing, 2 years ago. And I want to say he's in like the top 6 or 7 of most rushing touchdowns outside of the 10-yard line. So with like 5 or 6. So I personally think 10, that 9 to 10 spots, probably a good range for him, and he can go up again. Like if he has a 1,000-yard season, like back to back 1,000-yard seasons are hard to kind of, scoff at.
Right. I think it's like a fair ranking by like the national folks in that like he did have back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons already, but as you said, like the yards per carry kind of dipped last year, and then obviously just the Jags just kind of like limped to the finish line in general as a team, and like not that Etienne did too, but Etienne like hasn't finished a season fully healthy. And so maybe if he was actually like still crushing it during like fantasy playoffs and stuff like that, or like when like media members are voting on awards and stuff. But I think it's fair that he's like ranked right here. But I think at this time next year, he'll be considered more of like a top somewhere between like 5 and 8, because I think like Mitch Morse stabilizing the offensive line and then Brian Thomas adding spacing. I think like just those 2 additions alone, but then obviously hopefully if Etienne himself and then other players on the offense all take a little bit of a step from one year to the next, I'm definitely expecting like a Pro Bowl caliber season from him if he plays 14 plus games.
I think the big thing with him is like there's no like glaring hole in his game, right? Like James Robinson, when healthy, was really good, but his flaw was like the long speed. Leonard Fournette, vision and agility. Toby Gerhart, most things. So when it comes to ETN, like I feel like his vision and pacing could probably be a little better, but there's like he's like across the board at least like good at most things.
Right. I was going to say that. I'm glad you said pacing too, because that's definitely a big part of it, specifically for him. His vision and pacing has like slowly improved throughout his career, and it's not a detriment, but something that he probably could still keep getting a little bit better at. And then the only other thing I was going to say was the passing game, because he was not a good pass protector at all coming out of college, and now I feel like he's like passable. And then, as you said, in the pass game, he's definitely improved there and is able to. It's not like he's going to be lined up in the slot or anything like Urban Meyer might have fetishized out. But
he's a slash.
Yeah, he can at least catch a swing pass or like a check down or a screen, and like he does enough in the passing game. It's just that like the passing game and the vision aren't like elite, but like the speed and the tackle breaking and the burst, like he's got some other pretty elite traits. So I think it'll show up this season.
Is it a good thing for him that his foot like snapped in half before he could play it down for Urban? Like we never got to see like the devilish things Urban had in mind for him.
I guess in a way, but like Lisfranc injuries usually are like not very good. Like it's not.
I'm
like
surprised he's come back as well as he has from that.
Exactly. Like we can say that now in hindsight, but like even if we knew the kind of season that Urban Meyer was going to lead, like I would have been like, yeah, I still don't want the first round running back to have like a possibly career altering injury rather than not. But yeah, again, in hindsight, and maybe it was a blessing in disguise.
I would have hit my foot with a hammer to get out of that.
Okay, moving on to Evan Engram. He was ranked 9th by ESPN and 11th by CBS.
Fans were really pissed off that he was ranked 11th because, like, I put it out. I did an article on it, and I was like, agree or disagree, and people were pissed off. I think like the 7 to 10 range is a good range for him. You know, like because obviously the Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews trio leads, right?
Right.
Laporta, I think you got to put in front of him.
I would do Kincaid and McBride for young guys.
Yeah, I think I think Hawkinson's probably more of an argument than people want to believe, but I'd imagine most people in the NFL would take Hawkinson. That's why I like Jeremy. That's why I like this Jeremy Fowler series more than like most listicles, is because like you're actually getting a perspective on. Oh, wait, I'm about to sneeze.
Gesundheit. Here comes another one. Bless you. Is there a third in store? Oh, there's a third in store, folks. Here we go. Oh! Nice. Gesundheit. Bless you.
All right. The reason I like Jeremy Fowler's ESPN rankings every year is because he actually polls people in the NFL. Like he polls up to 80 NFL executives, scouts, and coaches. So it gives you more of an idea of how the NFL sees these guys as opposed to how one singular author is seeing them, which I think is immensely more valuable. Like I track this Fowler series every year. It's one of my favorite ones to track. I couldn't remember when. So the Jaguars, in all of them so far, they've done running back, defensive tackle, edge rusher, safety, and tight end. At least one Jaguar has been mentioned in every article in some form or fashion, whether they're in the top 10, honorable mention, or received votes. I remember years when it'd be like Josh Allen, and like that was it.
And no one else even received votes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it definitely seems like the floor has at least been raised a bit. That's why I like the ESPN one. So I don't know. I feel like it's a relatively fine ranking for Engram. You can, I think, probably argue for him up a spot or two, but it's nothing I'm offended by.
Yeah, I think I understand if Jaguars fans are a little bit miffed by it, since he led the league or led the position in catches last year, and it was the second most for a tight end in NFL history. I think he finished with 114 catches, and Zach Ertz has the record with 116, which he set under Doug Peterson. But the thing is that, like, even though the Jags put out this graphic or this video the other day of Engram, and said that he was second in the league among tight ends in yards after the catch. And I quote tweeted it and said, "Yeah,
you're such a bloody pooper." I saw that. You're such an ass.
What? I wasn't trying to be like. That's why I linked D-Rock's article too. But I was saying that I think Bill Barnwell wrote recently that Ingram ranked 103rd out of 104 qualifying tight ends or receivers in average depth of target last year. And then there's also the fact that like I feel like a ton of those too are like crossers that are like 4 yards downfield, and like crossers as opposed to just like a button hook or like a curl route or a hitch, which is a big deal because like in those routes you kind of have to like stop and then get going again. But the Jags did a good job. I mean, certainly their play calling wasn't perfect last year, but one of the things they did do a solid job was like just making sure that Ingram was kind of on the run most of the times that he was catching the ball. And so that helped the yards after catch numbers too. And so what I was trying to say in the tweet was that like we shouldn't take anything away from Ingram, but like because he did the most with what he was asked to do. But like it's still fair to point to the fact that he was like just a check down option essentially, and that's like was a huge reason that he got to 114 matches, as well as the fact that obviously Zay Jones had injuries, Calvin Ridley wasn't as consistent as we were hoping for, and then Christian Kirk, like after Christian Kirk's week 13 injury, Evan Ingram just kind of became a target hog for CJ Beathard included, and so I agree with you where I think like the 7 to 10 range is fair. He's definitely a great tight end. In the D-Rock article that I mentioned, he talked to ESPN's Michael Duraco about wanting to become more of a deep threat this season because he feels that he can contribute more. And I understand why he feels that way since he was just used about 4 yards down the field on average last year. And so I think it's fair for him to be in like ranked to 9th and 11th even after leading tight ends and catches last year, because like the context kind of helps to explain why. But I also think that if the Jags do turn him a little bit loose this offseason or this season, like we saw in week 1 last year, he had a great catch against the Colts down the sideline in week 1. And then I feel like that was like one of his only downfield targets the entire season. And so if he's able to be utilized downfield a little bit more and is able to kind of show that he's a true 3-level receiving threat, because as of now, he's kind of a 1-level receiving threat, I wouldn't be surprised if he found himself in the top 5 next year.
Yeah, 100%. And you're right. The targets, those last 5 games, it went 12 targets, 6 targets, 15 targets, 6 targets, 13 targets. So definitely was getting peppered with him. He only had 1 game with under 6 targets, and that was the first game of the season. Otherwise, he was like consistent in like at least 7 or 8 targets. So I agree with you. And like I said, I agree with the rank. I think Ingram is still, even with the caveats, and you weren't really being an ass, by the way. I just like poking fun at you. It just makes me laugh whenever the Jaguars post something nice about a player and you quote retweet it. You're like,
well, actually,
yeah, no, but I agree with everything you said. No, I agree with everything. You didn't say or tweet anything wrong. Like when you look at the role, like it definitely was not as, and the role, not Ingram himself, but the role was not as impactful as like the catch number would make you think. And I think he's capable of doing more. I mean, he had some times in 2022 where they would hit seam throws to him, and it seems like that went away completely last year, so I definitely think he could be used more downfield, and definitely think that he's been, I definitely like a breath of fresh air for their tight end position the last 2 years. Like they were a black hole at tight end before him, like Mercedes, and after Mercedes it was awful. So definitely has been like a big piece for them. He's been better, I think, than anybody thought he'd be when they first signed him, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's credit to the Jags, honestly, for kind of like buying low on him after New York, because I'm pretty sure there was reports that Jacksonville wanted to sign him to a multiple year deal, and then Ingram, like understandably so, wanted to bet on himself and just wanted to take, I think, like the biggest 1-year deal that he could, in the hopes of like signing an even bigger deal next offseason or the following offseason. And so it kind of worked out both ways, because then Ingram ended up getting franchise tagged but signed a long-term extension last offseason. And so he got kind of like the big bag that he was looking for. And then Jaguars got the long-term fix and like Just good option for their rookie deal quarterback that they were looking for too. And so it's kind of I feel like a win-win for both sides with that free agent pickup.
He'll go down as probably a top 15 free agent signing in franchise history, right? If not higher.
If not top 10, yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. All right, who we got next?
Josh Hines Allen. If you didn't hear the news, previous Jaguars star pass rusher Josh Allen legally changed his name to Josh Hines Allen to represent and kind of, just represent and show off, I guess, his maternal side of the family's name and just all of the athletes that have been in the family. He's talked a lot, especially in the last year, but even just in general, about how important legacy is to him. And so this is kind of a cool step in that direction, I guess. And there will be some kind of jersey exchange in September for any fans who might be miffed that they have a 41 Allen that says, or a 41 jersey that says Allen instead of Hines Allen. But anyway, Josh Hines Allen was ranked 8th among all NFL pass rushers by ESPN, and he was unranked by CBS Sports on a list of top 20 pass rushers. So
no. They edited it.
Didn't know they didn't.
Yeah, that's what Fat Tony said.
Are you
Fat
serious?
Tony's not actually fat. Yeah, but yeah, that's
yeah. I never understood that nickname.
Yeah, he's very well put together. Let me find it.
That's
he
crazy.
Said that's what I was saying. He's 10-10's guy. Tony was going in on Cody Benjamin when I was in the studio yesterday, man. I guess Hayes said that CBS should put Cody Benjamin in timeout.
Yeah, the whole station was pretty pissed about it, honestly. And I kind of get it because their guy broke the franchise's single season record last year. He ranked tied for second or maybe tied for third in sacks among all players last year. He's clearly an ascending player, even if last year was a little bit of a one-off in terms of sack total. He's always had the good underlying pressure numbers. He's always been one of the, really the Jaguars' best defender since Calais Campbell left, for sure. And so I understand why Jacksonville radio people are upset that they're one of the best players on our team isn't getting the recognition that he most certainly deserves. Because I think the 8th rating by ESPN is pretty fair. I think it's almost similar to Engram, where I think he's probably in the 7 to 10 range. Where I think he doesn't really sniff the top 5, honestly, but the second or third tier, sure.
There were 2 names on the edge ranking ahead of him. I put him ahead of, and every other one I thought was fair. I'd put him ahead of Aiden Hutchinson. That one was wild to me. But
yeah,
you know the NFL people are always going to
still.
NFL people are always going to love Aiden Hutchinson. He's a really good pass rusher, but Josh Allen is
not
just
Josh
as
Allen,
good, if not. Yeah, my bad. Josh Hines Allen is just as good in terms of pressure and pressure rate, and then is significantly better in the run game. And then Danielle Hunter was ahead of him, which kind of surprised me. I know he had a ton of sacks last year, but man, Josh had more. I don't know if you're using that as your basis. So I think Josh Hines Allen is a number 6 pass rusher. Probably sounds, I think, a bit more right, because Myles Garrett, I think there's a debate with TJ Watt, but I know every list will have TJ Watt ahead of him. Micah Parsons, I get Nick Bosa and Max Crosby. If you want to put most of those guys ahead of Josh Hines Allen, I won't debate it, because those are some really freaking good players. TJ Watt's probably the one I would debate. I'd say TJ Watt is at best 5th in that group. I think he's a little bit of a sack merchant. Josh Hines Allen, I think, though, at least if he's not top 5, I think he's at worst 6.
There you go. I can't think of any others that I would definitely put in front of him, honestly. Trey Hendrickson? Trey Hendrickson is...
I'd take Hines Allen over Trey Hendrickson, but I agree with you. Actually, I kind of like Trey Hendrickson now that he's openly demanded a trade from the Bungles. So that's actually going
we're
in his
splitting hairs, though. Maybe you would put him 1 or 2 spots higher, but we agree that he's just outside that top 5 of truly premier elite edge rushers, and it's definitely in that 5 to 10 range.
So CBS did go back and revert it. He's at 14. Here are the names ahead of him. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Right. Will Anderson, Brian Burns, Aiden Hutchinson, Khalil Mack, Montez Sweat, Hassan Reddick, Trey Hendrickson, Daniil Hunter, and then the top 5 guys we just talked about. That list sucks. Montez Sweat or John,
the worst part about it? The worst part about it is that I feel like they just forgot about Josh Hines Allen. Like, it's not even like, oh, I think that there's 20 edge rushers better than him. They just forgot to include him on.
No. Yeah, no, they straight up forgot about it.
Yeah, that's even worse, man.
Being a Jaguar.
All right,
that's being a Jaguar though. Like, we've talked about it. Nobody watches Jaguars games.
No, like
I'll be honest. I do that.
Small market, but yeah, there's a reason. Yeah. All right, let's
be honest. I do that in like mock drafts, and like I'll get to the end of a for sure mock draft, and like there's a top 10 player I completely forgot to mock, and I'll just power through it and be like, no, he's not going in the first. I can sympathize to a degree.
Yeah, sure. All right, the last one we've got is Andre Cisco, who is unranked by CBS in their top 20 safeties, which I think is fair because I might say he's a top 20 safety in terms of scale, but he did miss a decent chunk of this last season with injuries. So I like that's understandable to me. But he did draw an honorable mention by ESPN. Do you happen to have the quote up, John?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Which I think he's closer to the ESPN ranking personally. Like, I know he missed time, but I think he's at least bottom half of it. But I think he's top 20. So NFC coordinator told Jeremy Fowler that Cisco can generate turnovers at an elite level. He'll be a 30-plus career interception guy. And he's at 7 career interceptions right now. And that's with his rookie year being wasted completely. So if you're really counting, he's averaging 3.5 interceptions per season he's starting. I could see him becoming a 30 interception guy. I feel like honorable mention's accurate. He's really been the guy, I think, nationally for the Jaguars has been tagged as the potential breakout guy. And I think it's been to the point where, like, there's so much smoke that even if he has just an okay season, I think he's getting paid by somebody next offseason.
I think so, too. I mean, it makes sense that he's, like, getting tagged as a potential breakout because he was legitimately putting together, like, a top 5 safety season last year before he ended up getting hurt again. It was, like, week 7 or week 8, I feel like. He like pulled a hammy or just had some kind of like minor injury and then just wasn't really quite the same the rest of the season, even when he did play. But man, like the flashes were certainly there for like a good 5 or 6 week stretch. And so that's again, like, I think you're right where like he probably should have been at the bottom of CBS's list rather than completely left off. But just like the fact that he was not available for the entire season plus the small market thing, just I get it. But I will say, like, this, I was steaming yesterday because there was someone that quote tweeted the ESPN article and said Cisco is like the only safety in the league that has Earl Thomas like center field range. And like Cisco is like one of the few, if not the only college prospects that I really enjoyed watching and then was actually drafted onto the Jaguars. And so I've been a fan of his for a long time. But the only player that you can compare to Earl Thomas is Ed Reed. Like Earl Thomas was that good. And so like I just gotta slow down the hype there. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Andre Cisco makes the Pro Bowl this season and gets a huge bag from whether it's the Jags or a different team next offseason. But he's not Earl Thomas. Come on.
You reminded me a lot of me when I saw that tweet.
Yeah, just a reaction.
I did, and a few years ago I would have tweeted exactly what you tweeted.
Like
it was obviously an asinine take from an unserious account, but like
just people need to watch the
It was funny. You look at the quote retweets of that tweet. One of them is you saying LMFAO, and the other one is a Jags fan going, "And who coached Earl Thomas? Chris Richard."
I saw that too. That was a little nugget, honestly, by that Jags account by saying that the Richard moment or the nugget is pretty good. But like half the reason, like I feel like the cover 3 system was so good in Seattle was just that they were able to play cover 3 and have the center fielder because Earl Thomas was playing that position. Like when other teams started leaving, or whenever coaches started leaving Seattle and trying to replicate the cover 3, like there was a lot of reasons why it didn't work as well elsewhere as it did in Seattle. But I think the number one reason is that there's only one Earl Thomas.
Yeah, oddly, Josh Evans couldn't do what Earl Thomas could do.
Josh Evans.
I remember they'd taken Evans in like the 5th or 6th round, and then being like, "We actually got our 2 favorite safeties in the draft." And Cyprian, that's such good PR.
Come on, be serious.
Yeah. All right. You got anything else for us, Gussie?
No. So I think like Cisco should probably be like 15 to 20 range, maybe even 10 to 20 range. But I think so. We're both definitely expecting him to be ranked top 10 at this time next year. Is that fair?
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely fair. I think if he has the season he's capable of having, that's like, I think like 5 or 6 interceptions and turnovers, if not maybe more generated. I think you'll definitely see him creep up closer to that top 10 next year.
He's kind of the same for me for like Mitch Morrison, Brandon Sheriff, where like health is like the only question I have with him. If he's fully healthy, then like I think he's gonna kick butt. So
yeah, that's a good point. All right, Gus, got anything else for us?
I don't think so. My second SB Nation piece should be coming out pretty soon. I'm pretty
excited. There we
go. Look out for that probably early next week. But
hell yeah,
anything else?
Hell yeah, I'm excited to check that out. Well, we'll be back again next week at some point. It'll be the last podcast before training camp opens, so we'll just talk about some burning questions ahead of training camp. So thank you guys for sticking with us through the dead point of the off season. Gus, thank you as always for joining me, my friend. We'll be back next week. Make sure you subscribe to us on the Jaguars On SI podcast on YouTube. Give us reviews on Apple and Spotify. Like us on Facebook. Follow Gus Logue. It's Gus_Logue, correct? There we go.
Logue.
Yeah.
People spell Louge sometimes. I don't get it.
I've told you this before, but my brother-in-law, his last name is Logue, like the guy my sister married.
Oh yeah,
it's spelled just like yours. Yeah, so I'm always able to catch it. But no relation. We're not connected. Me and you, so. But remember to like and subscribe. We'll be back next week. Thank you, my friend Gus Logue, Big Cat Country, for joining us. Thank you guys for episode 109 of the Jaguars On SI podcast. Who would have thought? Not me.
We're turning along, baby.
Dude, in like March, I thought this pod, like I'm still not going to talk about completely what happened in March with like my position and everything, but I thought this pod was going to die in March. So every episode we do, every episode's a gift, Gus.
Ever since like January, I was like, I don't know, but
what the hell happened in January?
I feel just like the news of like the SI union or
I completely ignored that.
Okay.
But once March hit, I was worried, buddy. But no, we're good. We're good.
Well, we're through the deep end of the offseason now. Like we got through all these player rankings, and so next week will start to be exciting.
Everybody's got to make it out of the darkness sometime.
For sure.
Toby Keith. Actually, Sting, then Toby Keith.
Okay.
You don't know how either one of those are. Okay. All right. We'll be back next week for 110. Thank you guys, as always, for joining, and I hope you guys have a great one.